Hello and welcome to Drupal and the quest to win hearts and minds. I'm Sanjay D'Souza, Head of Delivery at Catalyst IT, based here in Wellington. Let me tell you a story about an unexpected quest. So, this is a story about me having to understand Drupal to a greater extent than I ever imagined. Because, you see, about 12 years ago I began managing Drupal projects at Catalyst. And during that time, I realized actually the people that I'm working with really love Drupal. They're really passionate about it. And it was relatively straightforward to deliver websites relatively quickly, because at the time I was also managing bespoke development projects as well, where the lead time to deliver something is significantly greater. But that was a short-lived experience many years ago. I then spent a lot more time managing bespoke teams, but in the last couple of years I was shoulder tapped and asked to lead, amongst other teams, our CMS capability in Wellington. So the reality is I had to understand Drupal to a greater degree. How it works, what's actually under the hood, that magic box of tricks that the Drupal developers use to develop sites extremely quickly, but also why clients would choose Drupal as well, and so many other options. I thought it'd be relatively easy. My experiences many years ago and the ability to deliver sites quickly and seeing the smiles on happy clients' faces lulled me into a false sense of security in terms of it should be fairly easy selling Drupal. The reality and the knockbacks suggested otherwise. What I've learned in the last year or so is that while Drupal has a great story to tell, and I don't need to preach to the converted in this room or in this building, but I've come to realize that it's not so much about Drupal, it's not so much about the technology, but actually I was on a quest to win hearts and minds, to sell the Drupal story to potential clients. So, what's in it for you? Now, I'm glad you asked that question, because basically no clients, no work. We don't get the opportunity to indulge in Drupal. It's as simple as that for many of us. But also understanding Drupal to a greater extent and why clients choose Drupal, it fosters a greater appreciation of delivering better solutions. If you know what the motivations are from your client, it means you're in a better position to deliver them exactly what it is they want. I certainly have come to appreciate the Drupal ecosystem that exists. 12 years ago, I didn't really need to worry about the community, the contributions, the history. It was a black box. You have Drupal developers who knew what they were doing. Next minute, you have a fantastic solution for your client. One thing I've learned is it's built for me a greater confidence in Drupal in terms of it can stand shoulder to shoulder with other options, proprietary software. And we'll step through that in terms of some of those pushbacks, but actually the end result is Drupal's got a good story to tell, irrespective of the attack vectors from other vendors, proprietary vendors in particular. But it also, some of these knockbacks, lessons learned, might help you sharpen your Drupal narrative in terms of selling the message beyond technologists and into people who have business problems to solve. But I think it's also important to note, and there's something that I've learned, Drupal is a means to an end. It's not the final destination. It's an important tool to help you get there. So I stand here before you with many scrapes and bruises over the last year, and the harsh realities of selling Drupal is paved, the road is paved with many rejections and disappointments. And I'm willing to share some of these with you so that you could be better armed with an understanding of some of the lessons that I've learned, the misconceptions that I've made. Let's start with the first one. Now, again, 12 years ago, pre-COVID of course, had the opportunity to work with so many great Drupal developers at Catalyst, some of whom are still here. One of them, Adam Bramley, who I understand was a winner at last night's Splash Awards. It was great catching up with him after 12 years. So that positivity, I thought, okay, I'm now tasked with selling Drupal. You simply have to mention the word Drupal. People will come running. The reality is, actually, Drupal is lost in a sea of alternatives. I don't need to mention them, but there are many for large and small businesses, government and private enterprise. All right, let's move on to something else then. Surely they'll be impressed with the technical terms. We always seem to sound impressive when we mention some of these terms. And as part of our solutions, the infrastructure, terms like Kubernetes and Docker, but they sound cool. Surely people will be impressed by those terms. The response, though, is we don't understand what you're saying. And there's nothing worse than being in an audience with potential clients and seeing their eyes glaze over. It can erode confidence faster than anything else. All right, let's move on to something else. Catalyst, we have a long history of Drupal. Surely nobody can knock that back. Well, actually they can. You're probably boring and old-fashioned. 20 years, Catalyst, you're not a startup. You don't have the energy. I want to go someplace else. Somewhere where I can see the passion in their eyes. All right, let's try another one. There's no vendor lock-in with Drupal. Now, surely nobody can knock that back. Surely. You lack confidence in your solution. The fact that you're talking about, we can take this solution and move elsewhere. It was at this point I was beginning to realize, man, this is a tough road. Why did I say yes to trying to sell Drupal? But there's more. This story, this nightmare hasn't yet finished. The next one, there's no license fees with Drupal. Please, surely that's going to resonate with you, particularly you being a government department. Sorry, but the cost of upgrades aren't cheap, particularly if there's a lot of customization involved. Yeah, true. All right, let's move on to the next selling point. See if that sticks. We're not proprietary. Surely that's got to be a good thing. You can see I'm starting to scrape the barrel here. You lack the sexiness of big tech. They have polished, seamless solutions, whereas your solutions have to be pieced together. And there's no guarantee that it's going to stay together. It keeps going. Number 7, Drupal is easy to use and manage. I'm sure everyone would agree. What's the response? Well, the reality is vanilla Drupal isn't sexy. I've learned the hard way when trying to sell Drupal to clients, and they see the content side of things, the admin screens. It's not sexy. People want sexy. Drupal can compete against the proprietary software, and I'm sure there's many talks here over the last few days that emphasize that. So what's the pushback? it's a jack of all trades, but it's a master of none. The last year was putting together a response for a potential client that wanted a community engagement solution. In fact, working with Chris Burgess, a pleasure to deal with, if I may say so. We managed to, we believe, put together a solution that was very compelling. But the reality is we're up against proprietary software that does this for a living. Perhaps saying that we don't wear suits to sales presentations might be helpful. And we're reaching the desperation point in my journey. Are you serious about this opportunity? Now, no one's actually stated that, but you can see it in their eyes when you go to a government agency and we're not wearing an Armani suit. Now, surely our passion, our enthusiasm should be a selling point. So what's the response here? You don't have specific use case experience. You don't have community engagement experience. You're putting together a solution. So yeah, you may be passionate, but you don't have the expertise of competition. We're almost there. There is an upside to this. It's not all doom and gloom, because I'm still here. So it must have a happy ending. Another one, it's easy to migrate content to Drupal, irrespective of where the source material is. And there are plenty of modules that allow us to migrate content easily to Drupal. Now, what is the attack vector here? Well, actually, it can be costly. And you know what? We have to retrain content people from the other system to here. So you may think it's easy to migrate, but it's not the full story. We can certainly compete against SaaS products, and we've done the numbers. But the reality is that our upfront costs are greater in terms of establishing the solution first. So even if you look at the total cost of ownership, and for many government agencies, it's over a 5, 6, 7 year period. The reality is that first year, there is a massive upfront cost in delivering the solution. So after receiving all these setbacks, and being a project manager, you get used to bad news, setbacks, disappointments, because that's just the reality of delivering successful projects. You have to overcome issues on a daily basis. I realized, okay, there needs to be a different approach, a more humanistic approach. If talking about Drupal as a technology and the great things about it isn't working, maybe there's a different approach. So, looking at it from a client end user perspective, in a nutshell, they just want a problem to go away. And in many cases, they don't care what the technology actually is. Some of them do. The architects, particularly in government agencies, are concerned about the architecture. One of the things I've come to discover is, yeah, we may not be, in this case of the community engagement tool, not compete against Granicus and some of the other solutions. But one piece of feedback we do receive is actually, Catalyst, we've considered you in amongst all these proprietary software, because while you may not be able to solve this use case as well as some of the other solutions, Drupal has the opportunity to solve other potential use cases we have in future. So rather than buying different proprietary software for different use cases, Drupal actually is very effective at solving a number of them. Another thing is they want somebody they can trust. All right, so where does Drupal play a part? It has a sound reputation. You talk about how many tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of sites around the world that use it are powered by Drupal. And more importantly, there's some very famous sites, but it ultimately has a very sound reputation. Clients also want to shape the solution in terms of have agency. Well, the great thing about Drupal, and something that I focus on, is building sites incrementally so the client has input along the way. Obviously within reason. Now with government agencies, they've got fixed time frames, fixed budget. You can't make it a free-for-all, but within reason, you can provide them with agency. They want genuine transparency along the way. This particularly is the case with government. You'd expect every dollar is accounted for. With a good Drupal developer, it's very easy to explain why things are or why things cannot be, and to demonstrate that. Clients want options now and in the future, now in terms of shaping the solution, and in future in terms of not locked into a particular roadmap that you might get with proprietary software. Again, AI is a big emerging area of Drupal, and it's great to be able to quote some of those modules that are emerging. They want cost certainty. And one of the things worth noting is even if usage increases, if there's a spike in usage, that doesn't necessarily equal cost increases, unexpected costs for the client. One thing that really came through was they want a solution that's going to stick around, that's not here today, gone tomorrow. And so, of course, Drupal was created in 2001. As I understand it, it's going to be around for a lot longer. Who knows, maybe, 25 years? Maybe another 25 years, at least. They want speed to market with new ideas. Well, modifying Drupal is Drupal-powered science is quick, certainly compared to bespoke development. Again, I manage bespoke development teams, and making changes can be a long and torturous road. That's why I certainly do appreciate those opportunities to work on Drupal projects. And I'm not saying that because I'm at a Drupal conference either. They want captivating user experiences. Drupal can be themed many ways, but also used headless. I remember first hearing about headless Drupal many years ago. One can imagine what came to mind when you talk about headless, but I've since come to understand what that means. But it means that you can really extend Drupal beyond what's out of the box. They want site security and reliability. Certainly this year there's been a lot of talk in the community about, in fact, breaches of security with public data. And that roadmap is great in terms of mentioning the continued focus on security and reliability. Clients also want to benefit from market trends in terms of things that are happening with other clients that could benefit them. We're lucky at Catalyst in terms of the number of different clients we've got, so it's a lot easier for us to use the term cross-pollinate from one client to another and take functionality from one, apply it to a use case for another. And they only want to pay for what they need versus being lumbered with functionality that they have to pay for but they'll never use. And of course, it's great to be able to say, look, we'll craft a Drupal-powered solution that comprises of functionality that you need and nothing you don't want. And therefore, the ongoing costs of support and maintenance are significantly lower than having to maintain a bloated application. So, hearts and minds, it's a change in focus from technology and how fantastic Drupal is to actually what clients really want. So, the 6 lessons that I've learned, I think it goes without saying, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Focus on what's important to the audience. If you get a list of requirements, you start with that. What was happening at Catalyst was we'd talk about how great Drupal is. Drupal does this, Drupal does that. Here, client, you make sense of all of that and hopefully something resonates, something sticks in that narrative. Well, actually, that wasn't working. So really turning it around and focusing on what they want, and then what can Drupal do to assist. Drupal is a great foundation, but it's not the vision, and that's not something that I've learned. Clients want to imagine and see what the future looks like. Now, showing them a content screen ain't creating a vision. Now, again, we're lucky at Catalyst to have a design studio where we can take what Drupal is laying down and then create some potential mock-ups. And there's nothing better than seeing people's eyes light up when they see those designs for the first time and realize, okay, we can imagine what the future might look like if we choose you. It's important to consider the needs of all stakeholders. Now, our primary audience are the content editors. We want to keep them happy. But as I've come to realize, there are so many other stakeholders within particularly government agencies that you have to consider. The project manager, for example. They want to make sure that the projects stay within time and budget. And as I've talked about, developing with Drupal gives you a much better chance of success than if you're developing a bespoke development project. And Dave, you're nodding along, so clearly some of this is resonating.
Oh, yeah, all of this.
Other stakeholders, the product owner who wants to have agency, feel in control, not disempowered and being told, hey, you'll get what you get at the end of the project. Now, just go away. Procurement, again, they want cost certainty as well. And so on and so forth. There are so many stakeholders to consider beyond keeping the content editors happy. But at the same time, it's great to see the content editors' eyes light up when they see, oh, actually, it's easy to manage updates. The reality is obvious strengths become obvious weaknesses, and you need to be very careful of that as you craft your sales message. For example, flexibility. Drupal is very flexible, but as I've said before, it may be a master or a jack of all trades, but it certainly isn't the master of anything. Or Drupal can be configured a million ways. Actually, that's also a weakness in terms of the ongoing overhead, which can be quite challenging for cash-strapped, particularly government agencies. But the reality is organizations are changing at a faster rate, and it's clear that versus, say, bespoke development, Drupal-powered sites can be modified and adjusted a lot faster. So that's certainly a message that is resonating with clients. But also minimizing the use of technical terms and actually speaking a language that clients can understand. They're business people ultimately. And I've had to step in and translate so many times. It's funny, developers are amazing people, very talented people, but they seem to lack an awareness when they get the audience with glazed looks. It means stop and reconsider the language you're using. I'll finish with a final thought. And for me, my key lesson over what seems like a lifetime, but it's only been a year or so, is selling Drupal is more about connecting with people, really understanding what they want, and not focusing so much on the technology. So with that in mind, I think for me it's clear that my journey still continues as I understand more that actually, ultimately, this is a quest to win hearts and minds. Thank you.